So what we are covering today, the state government is actually providing some really amazing financial support at the moment. And this is nothing to do with hiring apprentices or anything like that. So you would have probably seen in the last year or so, there was a lot of noise about the wage subsidy for trainees and apprentices and the 50% wage subsidy. And that was a really good subsidy. And it wasn't just for kids. You could, put your 40-year-old employee on it if you wanted to. This is actually a completely different scheme. If you've got people on that wage subsidy, you can have this one as well for the same people. So you're actually allowed to double dip. But most businesses don't know about this one yet. So we're trying to make as much noise as we can. So I've really got 3 objectives in this. The first thing is to make sure that I cover the key points in the first 5 minutes or so that you know whether it's worthwhile sticking around for the rest of it. Because I know everyone's busy, and I'll make sure that I'll give you enough information up front that you go, yeah, that's for me or that's not for me. And then the whole thing, I want to keep it well under 30 minutes because, again, busy. The other goal that I've got is to give you enough information that if you want to do this yourself, you'll have all the information that you need to do it. And if you decide to get us to help you, then you'll have the information to decide on that as well. So we have got plenty of clients at the moment, so I don't mind whether you come with us. I'd love you to, but I don't mind if you do or if you do it yourself. I just want to make sure that some of the businesses that do not have 5,000 staff and massive HR departments can actually get the benefit of this program. So whether you use us or not, I'll make sure you get enough information all the way along. So I'm going to cover what's included and what's excluded, who can and can't claim it. We'll touch on some of the other funding that you can claim alongside this. And the reason that we're doing it, it's our area of expertise. We've been claiming wage subsidies ourselves for the last 18 months. And as a business owner, it makes an enormous difference to, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Hey, it's like mentally, when you know you've got potentially up to half your people's wages covered for the next 12 months, it gives you the freedom to, I guess, think a bit more creatively, think about who else you might want to hire, what else you want to do. All those lists that most of us have got of these are the things that we're going to do, if only we had time, money, people, gives you a chance to actually implement some of that. I mean, even this webinar and our podcast, we wouldn't be doing those if we weren't getting wage subsidies for the people that are helping put these together. So it's, we're seeing the value and yes, we want to share it. Of course, you might get us to help or do it yourself. And I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about the big companies claiming all of this as usual. And so one of the reasons I think is the system's quite complex and it's small companies are busy running around trying to do everything else like actually run their business and don't have whole teams of people whose jobs are just to sit there and find out where the government money is. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'll get off that. So a little bit of background to this whole wage subsidy thing, just so that you know what we're talking about and where we are. And do feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go on. I will definitely answer them. Otherwise, it's just going to be Kimberly and I talking. Thank you, Kimberly. So a bit of background. If you remember back in 2020, when the world changed, at the end of 2020, JobKeeper was coming to an end. And, if you think back about JobKeeper, it saved a lot of businesses. It kept a lot of people going, but it had some pretty major imperfections, as anything would that's been put together in such a hurry like that. So it didn't grow any skills for the workforce. Employees got paid for not working. It made cash flow worse for a lot of people before it made it better. Like if any of you are in, is anyone here in hospitality? I'm not sure if we invited any hospitality people, actually, we probably should have. But if you were in like hospitality or retail or anything and you had lots of part-time staff, it actually made your cash flow worse to start with because you had to pay them all this extra money and then claim it back after 6 weeks, if you remember when it very first began. And it was really focused on stabilisation, not growth. And again, on my soapbox, of course, the big companies took advantage of it and gobbled a whole lot of it up. So towards the end of 2020, and I think it was October, they brought in this $2.8 billion fund for a wage subsidy for boosting apprenticeship commencements, which was the traineeship and apprenticeship subsidy. And then that kept getting extended and extended, and it got extended all the way until June, like last month. It's only just finished. Now, that was better because it created some skills. It required the employee to do a course. If I use some polite language here, it was massively taken advantage of Oh, I see we've got some people's chat is disabled. Sorry, guys. Let me just pause for a second and see if I can allow you to chat. That probably doesn't help. What have I done? I've broken it. Can you try the Q&A? Yeah, if you maybe pop it in the Q&A like you did, Ian. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm telling you to chat and the chat's not working. So just hop in the Q&A instead and I can see your questions even if everybody else can't. I don't know. Thank you. Anonymous attendee test, that worked. So it's working in the Q&A, not working in the chat. And I haven't got anyone in here with me, so I'm afraid we'll have to do questions in there. Sorry about that. Where was I? Okay, yes, I was on my soapbox again. The apprenticeship wage subsidy got massively taken advantage of by a small number of large employers. I don't know if anyone saw the numbers the other day on the news, but there were some companies, like certain fast food chains, who claimed $16–18 million worth of wage subsidies within the first few weeks of this coming out. And I'm sure it's just a complete coincidence that the top 10 who claimed those millions of dollars, almost all of them had quite strong political connections. So each round when they extended it, they tightened up a few more loopholes and a few more loopholes. But most of that first 2.8 billion got taken up in the first 3 weeks by big companies. Anyway, moving forward. Last year, then, the Victorian government came up with their own, I think it was late last year, with their own sort of COVID stimulus wage scheme, which is the one that we're going to talk about, which is not well known at all. Now, it's much better design. I don't know, I don't often say that about governments, but it is much better design. And it's ironed out a lot of the flaws that were in the other ones. So one of the things that it requires is that you can't just sack people and replace them and get a subsidy. You've actually got to be hiring additional staff. It's capped at 30 employees per company, so 30 claims. So big companies can't put 2,000 people on it like they were. But it is a bit more complex, of course, to apply because they have put all these control mechanisms in place quite sensibly. So I will tell you a bit more about how it works now, but that is just, purpose of it is to provide, it's really the Victorian one is about providing incentives for employers to employ unemployed or underemployed Victorians, and then they extended it late last year to include more people. Now, most people, when they hear that bit, don't go yet, listen to this bit, is they immediately think, oh, that means you've got to hire someone who's been on the dole for 12 months and who doesn't actually want to work and is going to cause you all kinds of headaches and grief. Actually, their definition of unemployed just means actively job seeking. So they could have been unemployed for a weekend, really. But also they talk about people who are disadvantaged in the workplace, and that is all sorts of people. It's anybody over 45, under 25, single parents, recent migrants have come in the last few years. There's a lot of people included in this category. So you don't have to go and hire some person who's been unemployed for 10 years and doesn't actually want to come to work. You can get somebody who's exactly what you need. And if you've already got somebody, they may still be eligible as well, which I'll explain in a second. Now, one thing they did do early this year is they quarantined some of this 250 million for preferred industries, and I'll tell you what those are in a moment. So if you're not in one of those preferred industries, you probably need to move a bit faster because we're not sure when that bit's going to run out. Let me just take one more minute and see if I can see any obvious thing to do with the chat. No, I don't know what I've done, guys, sorry. Attendees can chat with no one, here it is. Fixed. Would somebody like to test the chat again for me and see if I fixed it? And I'll set that as well. That might just help. Ian, thank you. Yes, that's working. All right, can focus on this. Okay, let me tell you a bit more about the Jobs Victoria Fund. So here are their official goals: to support businesses to recover from the pandemic and grow, to provide employment opportunities for people most affected by the pandemic, particularly women. So you can pretty much, if you've got women of any age, you can get some sort of subsidy for them if they meet the criteria. I'll show you what they are, and to provide employment opportunities for people who already face significant barriers to employment. And the significant barriers is what I was talking about a second ago. You'd be surprised how many categories are actually considered significant barriers. So if, recent migrants from non-English speaking backgrounds who've arrived in the last 4 years. So if you've got a French au pair, you can probably get funding for them. anyone under 25, anyone over 45. The portion that they've set aside for other industries is hospitality, warehousing, logistics, tourism, food processing, I think. Other industries are eligible, but you draw from the bucket that's for everyone else. So we don't quite know when that one is going to run out. And you get between $5,000 and $20,000 per employee, or it's prorated if they're part-time. There are quite a lot of people who are eligible for the 20,000. So let me show you. There are some interesting things in this one. Any employer is eligible, even if you're a sole trader. So if you remember a JobKeeper and even some of the other funding, you had to be a certain structure or have over or under a certain number of staff. In this one, you could be a trust, you can be a not-for-profit, you can be a company, you can be a sole trader, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, doesn't matter where your business headquarters are, as long as your employees are based in Victoria. They can be full-time or part-time. Another big one, which you wouldn't have been eligible for the apprenticeship wage subsidy, but you are for this one. They don't have to be Australian citizens. They can even be on a student visa for this one. So as long as you're hiring them and you're meeting the other criteria, they're still eligible. And you can double dip. So if they're trainees and they're already on that 50% traineeship wage subsidy, you can have this on top of that. So it's quite a generous scheme, but it's actually got some sensible controls in it that hopefully means that people can't kind of go nuts. The other thing it doesn't have, if you'd looked at the traineeship wage subsidy, you had to have supervision. So if your people were home-based, you couldn't get a subsidy for them. For this one, you can get subsidised for your home-based employees. There is a cap that's 30 for any company, but the cap's smaller depending on how big your business is. So if you're a sole trader, you can have one person, for example, but I'll explain that before we finish. Now, is that making sense so far? Someone let me know. Let's just go through, and I'll give you these slides afterwards. You're welcome to have them, so don't feel like you have to write it all down. Thank you. My new best friend, Kimberly. There's 2 layers of eligibility is the best way to explain this. First of all, they have to get through this filter. And then if they get through this filter, then they have to meet one of the criteria in the second filter. So they have to have been previously unemployed. That doesn't mean they have to be receiving Centrelink benefits. They could have just been between jobs. They could have left their other job, come looking for a job, got one with you. They could have been a stay-at-home parent, whatever. There's no minimum time and there's no income requirements around them being unemployed. So they don't have to be registered as unemployed with Centrelink. They could have been casual with you. So if you've had them as casuals for less than 3 months and then converted them to permanent within the last 16 weeks, then they could be eligible. Or they have to have increased their working hours by 10 hours or more. Now that could be they worked for someone else for 25 hours a week and now they've come to work for you for 35 hours a week, whatever. It doesn't actually matter how many hours. Thank you. My technical experts just messaged me and saying it's actually casual to permanent or fixed term. So you could just hire them on a 1-year contract and that would still be eligible. Thank you, Hayley. Keep telling me if there's any other bits I need to add. I appreciate that. And yeah, the 10-hour working hours increase can be with you, or it can be that you hired them straight from somewhere else and you increased their hours. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's a little bit fiddly, but it's worth thinking through because you'll have probably, if you've hired somebody in the last 4 months, it's worth having a serious look at them and saying, do they fit into one of these categories? If you've hired them 7 months ago as a casual for a couple of months and then said, yeah, I'll keep them on and given them a permanent or a fixed term contract, then that's worth having a look at. So this is not just go and hire someone today. This could actually apply to people that you already have working for you. So once they get through that filter, then there's a second filter where they need to meet there's a whole lot of criteria. I didn't put them all on the slide because it will make you go to sleep, but we can send you the list or the link to the list. So they have to meet one of all of these, just one. Anyone who's under 25 fits into that category. Anyone who's over 45. I think it's pretty much, Hayley, is it any women, even if they are between 25 and 45? I think it might be. Hayley will confirm in a moment. If you can confirm in the chat, Hayley, if it's all women or just women under and over 25 and 45. Anybody who's a single parent Again, don't have to go on single parent benefits, you just have to be a single parent. Non-English speaking immigrant in the last 4 years. If they are working under, there's a thing called the Working for Victoria initiative, which is helping people get jobs. If they're part of that scheme, they're automatically eligible just from being in that scheme. And there are many other categories of people, like the usual kind of disadvantaged employee categories, such as people with a disability, people who identify as Indigenous, those sorts of things, but there are a lot. Now, the total, as I said, is capped as at 30. We've had one client where we've lodged for all 30, and that took us quite a few weeks of work, but was worth it because it's, you know, $500,000-ish worth of subsidy for them. The number allowed is kind of roughly about 25% of your current staff number, but it differs depending on how many people you have. So it's more generous if you're small. If you're a sole trader, you can have one person. If you've got 4 or 5 staff, you can have 2. If you've got 10 staff, you can have 5, and then it sort of tapers off to 30 if you've got 120 or more employees. And although the application is a bit fiddly, if the criteria is met and the paperwork's done correctly, then there's no guarantees in life, of course, but it's pretty much guaranteed. It's not a competitive application process. If you meet the criteria and you do the things, then you should get approved. They do reserve the right to decline, but we haven't had anyone decline yet, touch wood. Okay, so Hayley's clarified in the chat, if you can see, women over 45 get the full 20,000. Anyone under 25 or men over 45 gets 10,000, and people between 25 and 45 can be eligible if they meet one of the other criteria. Thank you, Hayley. It is a little bit confusing, but I will show you how to fit. We've got a bit of a quiz thing that we've put together where you can put your details in and it can analyze them for you. I'll show you that at the end. There are a lot of categories, and we can send you, if you want to figure this out for yourself, we can send you after this, we can send you a link to the document, the policy document that describes them all, or if you want us to help you, we'll figure it out for you. Here's just a little example calculation in case you need a bit of encouragement. So if you've got, say, 3 new staff and you've got one who's a woman over 45 and one single parent, so they're eligible for the $20,000 rate, and then you've got a young person who's eligible for 10, then you'll get 50,000, and the way that it's spread out is you'll get 15,000 of that on approval, pretty much. Well, and when I say immediately, it takes a little while to get through, but once they approve it, you'll get another 15,000 2 months later, and you'll get the balance, the 20,000 6 months after that. So our experience so far with the timing of payments, and I will give you that in a bit more detail just before we finish, is that they say 14 days from when they approve it and send you the contract. But in our experience, it's been longer than that. Like they get to the 14 days and, oops, did I just break that? No. They get to the 14 days and then they say, oh, we're running a bit late, sorry. So probably assume it's going to be more like a month. One of the warnings that I just would give with this is do not, and same with any government money, is that do not count on it to solve your cash flow problems. You'll get the money, but you probably won't get it when you think you're going to get it. So, you know, if you are really strapped for cash, this will help you in the long run, but don't rely on it to pay bills on a certain day because it won't necessarily come in that day. Just a few examples of some of the clients that we've currently got claiming it in all sorts of industries. As you can see, we've done claims from 1 employee up to the 30, which was a big one. Now, a lot of those, I think actually most of those, are double dipping effectively with the apprenticeship wage subsidy, which has finished now. But actually, when I say the apprenticeship wage subsidy has finished, if you had somebody start work with you before the 30th of June, you've still got 90 days to sign them up for that wage subsidy. So if you did hire anybody within the last 90 days and prior to the 30th of June, if that makes sense. So what are we now, the end of July? Basically, if you hired anyone in May and June, you should probably have a quick word with us because we might be able to figure out for you how you can get a traineeship wage subsidy by sticking them on, I don't know, a business course, whatever it might be that you do, plus this subsidy as well. So a lot of the clients that we've currently got are quite legally double dipping with claiming half of their wages from the traineeship subsidy or from one of the other federal government, job active type employee placement subsidies. And then they're claiming the up to 20,000 from the Victorian government as well. So the only restriction on this is that you can't claim more than what you pay the person in total. So the Victorian government says, what other subsidies do you get? And then they tally up how much money you're getting, and say you might have been entitled to 20,000 for your person, but there's only 18,000 left of salary to cover, they'll just pay you the 18. I know I'm going through this really fast. I hope I'm not making it confusing, and I hope everybody's still awake. So it's capped at their annual wage, basically, is what I'm saying. I want to give you a couple of quick little case studies that will hopefully make it clearer, and then we will wrap up and I will check to see if you have any other questions. So first case study, this one, they owned a bar, a venue, and they had 3 eligible employees. They'd hired them all before we started working with them, but they'd all hired them or increased their hours within the last 16 weeks / 4 months. So the first employee, now this is interesting, first employee was actually the director's wife, and she hadn't been on the payroll before, and he put her on the payroll. You are allowed to hire your family members in this one. You have to declare it, but you're allowed to hire them. So because she hadn't been previously on the payroll and she was over 45 years old, she got the full $20,000. Then the second employee was the head chef, had been unemployed for quite a while because, you know, hospitality, Victoria. And so he was eligible for the 20,000. Didn't matter what age he was. It was just the fact that he'd had a longer period of unemployment. So they got 20,000 for him as well. And then their third one was their receptionist. So she had been working 3 days a week or so, 20 hours a week for someone else. They took her on full time. And so because she was a single parent and she had increased her hours, she was eligible for $10,000. She would have been eligible for the full 20 if she wasn't working before she started there, but because she'd been working for someone else for the 20 hours, it reduced what they could get. So you can see that the objective in this from the Victorian government is to have more people employed, basically. So any people that can either have increased employment or become employed, who are the people that they're going to want to fund the highest. Let me just show you one more case study. So this one is an interesting one. They're a manufacturing company, growing really fast, employing lots of new employees. And they had 20 employees that were eligible that had started in the last 16 weeks. Actually, little fish hook that I didn't mention earlier, there's lots of little fish hooks like this, but we're getting pretty good at optimizing it. Once you get to more than 3 employees on your claim, at least 60% of your people that you're claiming for have to be female. So we had to kind of go through their employment list and go, okay, how do we balance up the mixture? And yes, these ones are female, but they weren't unemployed before, so you're not going to get as much money. So let's drop this one out anyway. There's a lot of fiddling around, but we got to 20 good ones, if you like. So 3 people. First one, production worker, $49,000 a year salary. He's already getting $28,000 from the traineeship wage subsidy. When I say he is, I mean his employer is. And because he was a migrant within the last 4 years and didn't have a job immediately before he started this one, he is eligible for the full $20,000. So they get $48,000 for their $49,000 employee. It's basically costing them nothing for a year. Second one, production worker, also younger guy, 32. He was eligible for the full $20,000 because he was actually registered as a job seeker with the Victorian Mentoring Service. And then third one, office assistant. She identifies as Indigenous, so she's eligible for the $20,000, but because she's only working 21 hours a week, it's pro rata, so they get $12,000. So just for those 3 people, they're getting $52,000, and they've got 20 eligible employees. Okay, I have a couple of slides more of important details, and then I will tell you what you need to do next. Don't worry about memorizing all of this. We can send it to you, or we can work it out for you. So I've mentioned already that the number you can apply for depends on the total number of employees you've got. So if you've got 10 employees, you can apply for 5, etc. But as you get up to bigger numbers, once you get to 120 employees, you can only apply for 30. Actually, it would be interesting, now that the chat is working, do you mind popping in the chat, anybody, if you would like to share how many employees you do have at the moment? The gender split I have mentioned. If you are wanting to get it for 3 or more people, then 60% of those have to be female. Their earnings for your employees to claim the rebate for them, their earnings are capped at $120,000, so they're super highly paid. Government's figured out you don't really need their money, and you can get combination of subsidies, as I said. They have to be working at least 19 hours a week to be eligible, unless they've got a disability or they're a carer. But otherwise, 19 is the minimum number of hours that they need to be working. And to get the maximum subsidy, they deem full-time to be 35 hours a week or more. Now, here's another little important thing. You can apply as many times as you like. So if you've got somebody now who is coming up to the 16 weeks that they've been with you, then you need to apply for them now, and then you can do a second application if you're going to hire a new person or something like down the track. But you're better off to lodge for anyone that you've got that's eligible at the moment. Lodge right now, get what you can, because we don't know when it's going to close. It's because it's capped at a dollar amount, not a date. It makes it a bit tricky, because when the dollars run out, then it stops. And much as we've tried to get them to tell us how far they are through the bucket of money, all they will say is, as long as the submit button is still showing on the claim website, then they've still got money. So when they run out, I guess they'll switch it off. So there's no deadline, which means the deadline could be today, it could be next year, we don't know. We just have a question. Let me just answer this question. Thanks, Ian. We operate a ski lodge. Clearly your staff are new. Yes, that does definitely count. We do have an extra staff. If they are all new, so basically if you went from sort of 0 to whatever, then you'd be eligible for at least one. Hayley, so actually, Ian, if you want to tell us how many, maybe it's here. We do have an extra staff member we would not have had in previous years. Would that make them eligible? Yes, it probably would. However, if you had a period of having 0, 1, 2 or 3 staff, like just your management team, then that would be probably, I would think, counted as the base. And then anyone you hired on top of that would be worth looking to see whether they are eligible. So you've got 2 contractors as managers, so you'd probably say that's your permanent staff, and then you've got 4 staff on wages. Is there, okay, here's a question for you, Hayley, that you might want to answer for us. Ian said, is there a time limit that the person needs to be employed into the future because they'll finish at the end of September? Did you say, Hayley, that it has to be a minimum 12-month contract that you hire them for? I think she did. But you might find, Ian, if you have anybody that you do keep year round, even one of your contractors, you might want to put them on a 12-month employment contract and get funding for them for that 12 months if you're going to keep them on anyway. It's like we can certainly have a look at that for you. Thank you. Yeah, Hayley's answered you. And if you have a look, it needs to be 12 months from the employment date. But it might be worth looking at your managers and seeing if there's a way that you can restructure it that they actually cost you the same or even less, and you get more time from them. So either way, you benefit. If anyone else has any scenarios, feel free to pop them in the chat now too before we get to the end. Last important facts, no end date. As I said, it's going to end when the fund runs out. I just want to reinforce that we don't know when it's going to end, and we will do our best to do it. If we do it for you, we'll do our best to do it as quickly as we can, but it'll end when it ends. Now, applications are getting processed pretty slowly at the moment. It's taking them about 2 months to process them. What they have said to us, though, is that as long as we've got them in and the submit button's still there, then there's enough money that they will be able to fund the ones that have been lodged. Our timing experience so far has been that first instalment that's paid immediately can actually take up to a month to come through from once. They'll send you an agreement, you sign it, send it back, and then it takes up to a month to get it from there. Then 2 months later, or 2 months after the due date of instalment 1, you'll get the next 30%. And then 6 months after that, you'll get the balance. So it won't solve your immediate cash flow challenge, but it's all paid within sort of 6 months. So it's not like you have to wait the whole year for it, which is quite nice. I won't go through all those, it's boring. Those are basically just all the steps that you need to do if you want to do it yourself. I thought I'd put this in for the people that want to do it yourself, and then you can take that and work your way through the list. Because just a bunch of forms and statutory declarations and more forms and things. When we lodged the first one that we lodged, it was claim number 409. The most recent one that we lodged was, 6,000 something? 6,178. So the pace of claims has accelerated. I think people are starting to find out about this. I think it's going to be like the traineeship funding, where it goes slowly and then all of a sudden everybody knows about it and it suddenly rushes in. So I am starting to get a bit worried about how much is left in their bucket. it is pretty time consuming, this application. Hayley, who's chipping in at the chat, is a commercial lawyer, and she does our applications. I can't do them. It's not I'm a chemist originally, but I've got a chemistry degree, but my brain just does not work that way. There are just so many forms to fill out, but she's really good at them. So if you've got someone in-house who's got that kind of lawyer brain and is really good at that sort of stuff, get them to do it. If not, get us to do it, would be my suggestion. I just wanted to pop this in. I dropped it in last night when we got this email yesterday. That last paragraph, this client emailed us yesterday and said, thanks for your help in getting all this set up. More has been invaluable for us to get up and running as we recover from the impacts of COVID, and the subsidy has helped enormously to bring her on board much sooner than we could otherwise have afforded. That is why we do this. Been there myself, had businesses for years. Some have gone really well, some not so well. And I really, really get the benefit of having a bit of stable cash flow from the government at this time, if we can get it, especially you guys in Victoria. I'm sitting here in Queensland, and so we've been quite fortunate for the last couple of years compared to businesses in Victoria. Can't imagine. So let me explain what we can do if we help. So if you do get us to help, we're basically doing it on a no win, no fee, if you want to call it that, no risk kind of basis. So 100% risk free. You don't pay us anything unless you get approved. I am thinking that we probably won't do it this way forever, because it does take a very long time to get them approved. But when we first started doing it, it was like, no, let's just help people make some money at the same time, and let's not worry about the timing. So if cash flow is an issue, you don't even need to pass when you're approved. You can wait until you actually get your money from the government. Just talk to us if that's the case. Here's my thinking though. So this bureaucracy is not your core business, I'm assuming, because you're probably sane. You are probably busy because business is either booming or busting or still unstable. There's really not much in between at the moment, is there? So you are very welcome to do this yourself, but I can confirm that it is really complicated. That's why Hayley, our escaped lawyer, does all of ours. There's a lot of back and forth with the assessors, which is really time consuming, and you have to understand what they're asking for and why they're asking it, so you know how to present the information to them. So what I would suggest that you do is you get us to do all the setup. Hayley, can you drop the quiz into the chat if you get a moment, please? So like your accountant would have done with JobKeeper if you were eligible, they set it up, and then once it's approved, you just need to action the claim each time, which is basically just filling out a form. We can help you with that, but you probably won't need us to. You carry on with your core business. When it's approved, and this is probably the bit that everyone's waiting to find out, you just forward us 10% of the amount that you're approved for. So our fee is 10% of the approved amount, and you don't pay us that until you get approved. And then you just keep the rest, and you just carry on doing what you do best, which presumably is not manage all this stuff. Yeah, and like I said, if you're having any cash flow challenges, we are quite happy to wait until the grant money actually hits your account, not just approved. Just talk to us and we will do whatever we can do to help. Now, Hayley has put in the chat a link to a job form, if you can see, which is a quiz that we have created to do two things. One is to work out whether you're likely to be eligible, and for you to say, yes, if I am eligible and you guys lodge it for me, then I will pay you the 10%. So what I would suggest that you do, if you aren't sure if you've got someone who's eligible, or even if you do think they are, is get us to do the pre-assessment. So the first step is just for you to give us some information, some brief information, and your approval for us to investigate it for you. We'll do a quick assessment of your eligibility, and we can go through that on the quiz, or we can talk you through it over the phone afterwards, whatever's easier for you. After we've done that, we'll advise you whether we think there's an opportunity there for you. And if it's going to be really simple for you, then we'll just tell you, and if you've got time, you can just do it for yourself. If it's more complex and we know that you're going to be better off to get us to do it, then we'll tell you that. But in the end, it's your call. You can decide. We won't launch anything or apply for anything in your name without you giving us the go-ahead. So the steps are: do the quiz, decide if you want us to do it, and then we lodge and we go ahead. Now, most of our team are working from home all over the country at the moment, and I'm in the Brisbane office, someone else's Brisbane office right now. So probably the best way to contact us would probably be to email Anna, who is my PA, so I've popped her email address on that slide. But I would suggest, actually probably even simpler than that, is if you just grab that form out of the chat that Hayley has dropped in there, and do that, and then that could be the starting point to the conversation. I hope that all makes sense. Sorry about the mess up with the chat at the beginning, people. If anyone has any other scenarios that they want to chat about here, I'm happy to. Otherwise, pop them in the form and we can look at it for you in that situation. What we will do is we might, Anthony, if you're listening, we might shoot out an email today or tomorrow to everybody with the summary of the presentation and the form and stuff for those people that don't get a chance to grab it now. But otherwise, if you want to have a chat, just email Anna and she can set up and I can give you my mobile actually too if you like. If you want to give me a call about anything before you do it, 0448 577 883. But otherwise, yeah, just do the form. I hope that was useful, people. We've got a question from Laura Farrell before I go. If one of the guys who started with us has just moved from another employer because he was advised that he's been made redundant, is he eligible? I would think that he probably would be, Laura. Hayley, would you like to comment on that? Because I would think that he was then actively job seeking because he became unemployed. Yes, Hayley agrees. Yeah, I would think he would be. So definitely worth looking at that one. If you can get, $5,000 to $20,000 for him, you may as well. Cool, thank you. I will stick around for about another 30 seconds in case anyone's got any last minute questions. Otherwise, I hope we can help you. If not, good luck doing it yourself. I know that didn't sound very sincere. I mean that. I hope it works out. And all the best with your businesses. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you for sticking around to the end. I really appreciate it.